Welcome to the Builders Podcast, episode 74, Laura Raynak, her entrepreneurial story and becoming a successful executive talent scout. Before we jump into this episode, please subscribe to this podcast if you love business and real stories from the trenches. And after a listen, please give us a thumbs up, like, and share if we've earned it. Hit that notification bell too if you're on YouTube so you don't miss each episode. With your help, we can reach more people and deliver these valuable From the Trenches lessons to those that need it. Enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another The Builders. Today, we are joined by Laura Raynak. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for having me, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. Yeah, so we are going to do what we always do here on The Builders, and we are going to talk about her story today. It's the first thing we do when we have somebody on. We like to get to know them a little bit, and we expect them to come back someday, but the first time, we want to talk about their journey, how they became the person they are. This is The Builders. We want to know how they're built and how they built themselves as an entrepreneur, as a business person, as the great person, the awesome person they are today. So that is where we are going to start. Laura, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit, and then you can share your story with us, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, sure. My name's Laura Raynak, and I am an executive level recruiter. I've been doing that for over 25 years, mainly in Silicon Valley. I focus on life science companies and medical technology companies, and helping them sort of build high-performing leadership teams. And I didn't go to college thinking I'd be an executive recruiter. That's for sure. So I have I think it's an interesting journey, and I hope it inspires people to kind of go for what they want in life, and it works.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. To extract the lessons and inspire people. So I have no doubt.
I went to school to be a doctor and I got a degree in biochemistry and molecular biology. But my pathway to doctorhood didn't go sideways, and not because I couldn't get in or because I wasn't capable. It was more along the lines of what was happening in my family at the time. And my dad had a stroke in my senior year of college, and my parents are high school sweethearts, so it changed us. And we're a pretty tight family. So instead of going away to school, I stayed home for a bit and was trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, because I'm putting off medical school for a year, or graduate school for a year, and medical school. And I got a call from some friends at Stanford University, and they were in the anthropology department, and they said, "Hey, we're going to go to the Bahamas instead of study family island culture. Do you want to come with us?" And I'm like, "Well, how long do I get to be there?" Because I'm thinking, how long do I want to be away from my family? And they said, it could be 6 months or it could be a year. And I thought, well, I could probably do 6 months. It turned into 9 months, and what I realized is on this journey was that there's no place like home. In other words, the United States is really the land of opportunity. And field research, while it's really interesting, and the Bahamas are beautiful, and it's a fabulous place, it's no place to live for me. So I came home, and I'm still with the situation. Okay, now what do I do with myself? And I got this book that Richard Bolus wrote called "What Color Is Your Parachute?" I think there's a new version now. He keeps some new versions, new editions of it. And I kind of went through this series of exercises, and I'm like, I want to do work I like that is going to suit me. And so I ended up figuring out that I wanted to work for the pharmaceutical company, and I wanted to work in sales. And so within 90 days, I had, in a very not great job market, in 90 days, I had figured out how to get myself interviewed and hired by a pharmaceutical company as a pharmaceutical salesperson. Oh. And so off I went. They relocated me to the Monterey Bay area from the Silicon Valley, and away I went. I had a great manager. I did incredibly well there. I got recruited by a competitor firm. a couple of years later with a 35% pay raise, very enticing to take those sort of opportunities. I was young and I didn't realize, all of the factors to include. There was one critical question I should have asked was, I'm replacing someone, why did they leave, right? And what's this guy like? What is this new manager like to work with? I mean, those are critical things. I learned this early. So my new manager was not a great guy. I mean, I did incredibly well at this company, and I was there for almost 8 years. I rose in the ranks, but my initial manager was not a great guy. He was the guy that, all the girls hated riding in the car with. He would either shame you, or he would and I'm an attractive girl, so he would put his hand on my knee in the car and make me feel really uncomfortable and ask me some weird questions. And I was like, how could I get away from this guy? So none of us really liked working with him or riding along with him. And we all, I rose to a certain level of ranks, and I got a new manager, and I thought, my life is going to get better at this company, and it got worse. So I left, and I went to another company that was based. I decided I wanted to work for instead of an East Coast based company, and it was great. Look, I learned a lot. They put a lot of money and training into me. I became a top performer for them. I learned a lot about myself and what it took to really run an organization, sell to doctors. There was a lot of great things that came from that. But I wanted to work for a company that was in the West Coast, because I felt that the East Coast people really just didn't get us left coasters in the ways they didn't. And our markets are different here than they are in sort of like New Jersey, New York, in that area. And the markets in the Midwest are different from us as well. So I wanted to work for a West Coast-based company, and I did. I got hired by a really great company. I had a female boss. I was thinking, yay, I don't have to worry about the things I had to worry about in my last role. And I enjoyed working with her. She really helped me grow. She helped me understand, I had to clean up a lot of messes that was left behind by my predecessor in that role. A lot of broken relationships, lots of fun things for me to focus on to help improve the organization I was with. And I took bottom performing areas and brought them to the top. And I did it a couple of times. And then we were purchased by a company out of Ithaca, New York. And I remember the managers coming into the room and offering me a role in yet another bottom performing area. And I thought to myself, well, that I could do that, but I really wanted to be rewarded for my effort, because the way we were rewarded was sort of a two-pronged profitability over last year, but it takes about a year to get up there. And then also driving sales. And that takes also between a year and 18 months. So I would just get these things going, and then I'd have to start over. And so this time I thought, well, I don't want to start over. I want to be rewarded for what I've already done. And it was so funny. The senior management team sat there, and I said, so I really appreciate this offer and this opportunity. I said, so what do I get if I stay? How am I going to be compensated if I stay? And their reply was, I was lucky to have a job. And so I thought about it for a minute, and I thought, well, maybe I should ask another question. And that question was, so what do I get if I leave? And their response was, well, it just won't be as good as you stay. And I'm like, well, I really kind of need to see some numbers to determine that for myself. So here I am, early on in my career, taking control of it and not letting these, men in senior levels kind of push me around a lot, which happened a lot. I have to tell you, in the late 80s, early 90s, all the way up until 2000, that happened a lot. It doesn't happen as much. People are a lot more careful now. I still think we have room to grow, but I really didn't want them to define my life for me or the types of roles. So I ended up leaving, and they didn't want to pay me my severance, which they should have paid me because we were reorganizing. And if you didn't stay, you got a severance. That's kind of how it works in corporate America. Right. So I had to sue them to get my severance, which I sued them and won. So here I am, very bravely attacking corporate America as my little self.
Yeah,
right?
good.
The little guy can win.
Why didn't they? Why didn't they want to pay you your severance?
Because they thought I just left.
They didn't like you leaving. Because
they didn't like me leaving, and they wanted to
you.
punish me for it. And they thought, well, we won't pay you.
Oh man.
And I'm like, well, it's. California, unlike a lot of the country, is maybe more of the country, is an at-will employment state, and so the employee is at will, and the employer is at will. It's both sides, meaning anybody can quit anytime, and there's no repercussions on either. So they can fire you with no repercussions, but you can also leave without repercussion, and. Since they were an upstate New York company, they didn't understand that law, apparently. Otherwise, they probably would have handled it a little differently. So, but the problem was I quit and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So here I am back to the same issue I had when I, came away from the Bahamas and was living at my parents' house, which was really not okay in my early, my 20s, and then now I'm here in my 30s. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do now? And so my answer was become a scuba instructor and travel internationally. So I did that for a little over a year while
That's a pivot.
Yeah, while I looked at other things to do. Like, maybe I should try this. So I worked for a friend of mine. She had an advertising agency. I helped her out for a bit. I went to work. I eventually went to work for a recruitment, advertising, and branding agency because I was always curious about recruitment. And we created the Tell a Friend campaign for Cisco, and we helped them hire 14,000 people in a year. So this is back in the sort of the go-go days. And we did a lot of fun things like that. Mostly in tech. I handled the healthcare business. But that culture wasn't a great fit for me. I'd come from super structured, sort of healthcare focused, like working in the healthcare system organizations that were highly regulated. Not so in advertising and branding. They're a little more freewheeling and fun, or a lot more. And so it was a bit of a culture mishmash for me. Here I am learning. My manager and I came to an agreement that I would leave the organization. And within a week, I got a call from one of my friends who said, hey, this human capital intelligence company needs people. And I go, really? And they go, yeah, you can work from home. And I'm like, I can? And so I ran in there and I met with them. And what they taught me to do was to interview people. And they started me out on semiconductor stepper engineers. So these guys had PhDs in chemistry and physics, and I was supposed to call them and profile them according to, what they did, how they did it, that sort of thing. And I did that. I was really good at it. I mean, like I was profiling more people per day than anybody else. Guess they don't talk to many girls is what I was thinking, right? A girl calls them on the phone, and this is the old days when the phone trees in the companies were not like so. It was easy to get somebody at a desk, right? And this is before LinkedIn, so we didn't have sort of social media for corporations. And it was super fun. I enjoyed it. A few weeks later, the state of California sent me a letter saying they were offering me an education grant. I'm like, really? I have a degree in biochemistry. What am I going to do with an education grant? And I thought, well, I could get a certificate in human resource management through a university extension, and I could learn about recruiting and human resources because this is continued interest for me. I had a friend who was a recruiter, had a great life. I thought, I think I want to do something like that. And because I didn't...
Was it kind of...
Yeah, go ahead.
Why did you think... Why were you attracted to recruiting? I mean, just you liked that process, or the experience you've had just kind of dialed that in for you?
Well, I am a people person. So my minor in college was psychology, and I used to I was the teaching assistant for the psychology of fitness. So I loved people. I loved people, pulling people together. I liked working in teams. I had a lot of exposure to it in my college career. I liked working in teams with my companies. And then I had a friend who was a very good senior recruiter who was an executive at Pepsi and Atari and some other really good companies that had strong human resource departments. And he came out and became a recruiter. And he had a good life. I mean, really, he was a well-regarded person. He was fun to be around. He had a nice lifestyle. He had a nice family. I mean, it just all seemed like something. He had something I wanted.
It's
right?
like you. Yeah, it's like that was the life you wanted, and it fit. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
And I thought, well, how do I get there? And so this human capital intelligence organization allowed me to start figuring out how to do the mechanics of the recruiting. The branding agency that I worked for helped me figure out how to pitch a company basically to people to attract them to it. And then here I am, the state of California is giving me a grant to go back to school. And if I get a certificate in human resource management, then I'm like my life just kind of started to fall into place without me driving it. It was kind of like just by design, my life started to fall into place. And I was, open enough to allow those changes to come and for things to just happen and take advantage of the opportunities that were presented to me. Like there were things that happened that I couldn't have made happen to save my life. I believe in I think I was divinely intervened on and said, hey, there's this dream about you being a recruiter in your heart. I want to make that a reality for you. And here's some things that are going to happen. So
I think, if you don't mind me interjecting here. So I try to sometimes try to relate things to my journey too, and how it's kind of fallen in place later in life and what I'm doing. I'm in tech or doing web development design, and how, my artistic background and then my technical love for technical stuff and business and all kind of played this role in me finally settling down. But it all just, I think, there's a saying out there, I'm not going to think of it off the top of my head, where it's like, you kind of create luck through taking massive action. The more action you take, the more luck you get, or something like that. But listening to your story, it's kind of a similar road where you try all these different things. You're learning, you're working for this company, doing all this stuff to try to find yourself. And then one day it just comes together and like, oh, this is what I should be doing. And the stars align and here you are.
And it gets better from this point on. It gets better, right? Because as soon as that happened, I progressed with the Human Capital Intelligence Company. I became one of their top producers. They taught me how to pull apart an org chart without a LinkedIn. We did some pretty amazing things, and we would sell this information to the competitors. So one of our claims to fame was we took out the Netscape browser because Microsoft just bought all the information from us and hired 20% more people in each group and just outmanned Netscape. It's pretty much how Netscape died, unfortunately, or fortunately. I'm not really sure. And then
good or bad,
right? And then I got hired on by a software company to run recruiting and talent for them, and I did that. And single-handedly hired like over 70 software professional services people in a year globally, which was amazing in and of itself. And I started to build real confidence around my capabilities of doing things that in businesses I knew very little about. Software tools, come on, who knows that? That's like really esoteric stuff. And then I ended up in a .com, and I did really well there. And then when the .com bust happened, I thought, this is a good time. And then I said, well, maybe I should just go to a traditional medical device or pharmaceutical company, which I did. So for 10 years, I did sort of corporate staffing. And then my customers from the advertising agency or people I met from Richard Stern, which was the human capital company, would call me and go, hey, can you hire this person for me? Can you go hire this person for me? And so I would ask my employer if I could do work on the side. And they said, as long as it was not in conflict, which it never was, I would do that.
Nice.
And so, you know, I remember my first month, or I was probably working for Richard for about 4 or 5 months before I took a corporate staffing job. And I had a couple calls like that. And one was for a vice president of finance, and the other was for a head of engineering and for a networking company. And I was like, yeah, sure, I can probably do that. And sure enough, I could do that. And I just said, tell me the companies you want the people to come from. And I went and I grabbed the people. And 6 weeks later, I'm looking at these 2 checks. And I thought, I am not going to go to work for anyone else again. I took the corporate staffing roles because I wanted to grow my skills as a recruiter. And then I wanted to figure out how internally companies make decisions about hiring. I really wanted to be that person who understood the other side of the street so I could get better at providing the right talent. I mean, it was all about serving my customer better. And so corporate staffing for about 10 years. And then in 2007, I stepped off and decided to be a partner in a retained executive search firm and work exclusively at the senior level. I didn't want to hire like individual contributors and managers and directors anymore. I just wanted to work at the senior most level. And they hired me as a partner. I learned a tremendous amount. They were wonderful to me. They really groomed me into a senior level recruiter. It's very different than recruiting first line management roles. It's a lot more high touch. There's a lot more finesse to it. I liked the challenge of all of that. It allowed me to bring my charm and manners that I was brought up with to work finally, because Silicon Valley is kind of a scrappy place. And I got to bring all of those, you know, my upbringing got to get pulled. And so it's like my whole life was designed for me to be who I am today.
Yeah, I love that. You're like being your authentic self. You're just being your authentic self in your, this is like your domain. You just naturally fit. It's great. It's been like that. And I want that for other people. I really do. I feel like, and that's what I look for when I go to look for candidates for my clients. I look for people this is what they're designed to do. So my client gets the benefit of someone who naturally is capable of what they're doing, but also naturally works in the cultural fit. Because I've been in both. I've been in a great cultural fit, and I've been in a rotten cultural fit. And I can tell you it's night and day in terms of what people can accomplish, what the organization can accomplish, and sort of what and sort of how much more fun it is to go to work, right? Work should be fun, I think. Yes. Right? We should enjoy our work. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And so back to the partners, they're great. You know, the only limiting factor I had with my partners was that they were an entire generation older than me. So I was like working for my father, which was wonderful. And I was the only female in the room, which was wonderful because I didn't have to worry about inappropriate behavior with them. I could fully trust them. I could learn from them. They wanted to mentor and groom me. It was really, really wonderful. Yeah. Unfortunately, because they were an entire generation older than me, health issues came up for them. And so in 2010, we dissolved the firm, and I went out on my own. And and so for the last 12 years, I've had my own executive recruiting practice, and I haven't gone back to any corporate roles. Actually since 2007. So really 15 years have been in helping companies acquire senior talent, building teams, and becoming better. Now, it's funny, people say, so Laura, do you work with startups? Do you work with big companies? So if I were to say, what is my sweet spot? It's really in organizations that want to remain entrepreneurial or sort of hungry and growing, whether they're a small company just assembling their first team or enhancing their team and taking that next step in growth up, or a well-established organization that wants to continue to innovate. Like, for instance, I've worked with Johnson & Johnson's innovation group to help them hire vice presidents. So that's my big customer, right? But mostly all my other customers are getting ready to be commercial or getting ready to develop a product in healthcare. So biotech, medical device, life science tools, healthcare IT, those sorts of things.
Well, I've been taking some notes here because I take some notes as we're going, right? And so one of the things, from my interest, and probably some of our audience most of our audience, if not all of them, are business people, either running agencies or some kind of business. And one of the things, you seem uniquely, well, number one, have you built your own team, or are you doing all this stuff yourself?
Yeah.
What's your company structure?
No, I used to do everything. And then I got tired.
Yeah.
So I have a virtual.
That's how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. I have a virtual assistant who is phenomenal. He manages scheduling all my social media activity, posting, scheduling me for podcast speaking engagements, that sort of thing. I also have a small team that supports me with my customers. But the customers know that it's like me. I'm the duck above the water, and my people are the feet underneath, right? So my clients never see my engine below, but they have the interface with me, and so that's how I've been able to be productive. So I have a small team, not a big team.
You ever think about? Eventually, we all think about there's someday we're going to hand this off to somebody else. And to have others that are in charge of accounts and stuff like that, or eventually, is that in the plans, or are you just always going to be?
That's kind of my evolutionary phase. My partner would love for me to hire sort of a mini me and bring them up, and he would like me to, sort of fade into the sunset, so I have more time for fun things, my other interests, which include showing horses and hanging out with my friends. I have not found that person yet, but I'm looking for that person. So yeah, I'll take any referrals or people who would be interested. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a different kind of person. That person has to be sort of self-starter. Really, they have to self-start themselves, and then they have to have enough courage to ask me a lot of questions. Because I'm not going to know what they don't know, and I want someone with sort of a curious learning mindset, because that person will be able to sort of absorb and grow. And I'll have to tell you, the secret to my success was to remain curious and resilient. And what I mean by that is take everything that happens as a lesson and figure out what I'm going to learn from it. And resilience is, not everything's going to be fun, right? So some of these lessons were a little more painful than others. And to understand that it's just part of the growth process. And it was something I needed to go through to get to my next level, right? And so just having that sort of learning and resilience mindset are very important in what we do. Because there's so many things that are out of my control with people. Right.
Yeah, you got to figure out what you control and not.
I like to kid people because, listen, I am the only person I think I know that has a product and a customer that could change their mind at any point in time along the way, and I have no control over it. Right. So the candidate can change their mind and the client can change their mind about where they are in the process at any moment. And so there's really nothing I can control. I just have to just kind of go with it.
Yeah. I think that every business has that kind of element to it somewhere. There's certain things you just gotta, that's part of your day to day. Gotta just deal with it. Now, so as an agency and having a team, I think about what my next hires are, and I kind of see them in my head, and so I can kind of. That's why I'm uniquely interested in that teams part of this, because I have my own team, and we're about 3.5 years in, but I haven't. I'm going to have to replace myself eventually. I'm still in that mode where I'm doing, I'm wearing a lot of hats, and I have to think about what does that person look like that's going to, there's going to be, it's more like I can only do so much. We already have a decent sized client base, and so I'm pretty stretched. So I'm going to have to find that person that's going to come in and be able to not just work with accounts and stuff, but they're going to have some development experience like I do, or a little bit of design, that perfect mixture, and be able to actually, be front facing with clients and stuff. And so that's an important consideration for any agency or company. So I think about that too a lot.
Yeah. So what I advise my clients on when they're starting to think about who they're going to hire is really think about what it is you want to accomplish, like in the next 12 to 18 months, and make that very granular. Like, here's the 8 to 10 things that if I hired somebody and they were the perfect person, these things would be accomplished. Okay. And from that, you're able to extract sort of the skills and abilities that you're going to be looking for in these people, number one. And number two, when you hire that person, you have something to measure them against. And it's transparent what you're expecting out of them. Right? So it creates a lot of an opportunity for that person to go, oh, here's what's expected, very clear, right? And you just say, yep, really clear. And the more time you take up front with that, the better the process runs along. Because then when the right person does show up, it's pretty apparent. It's very apparent. Makes it a lot easier. Decision-making process is a lot easier. Yeah. And the second thing I advise my clients on is, the second thing is don't interview more than 6 people for that role. So be very selective about who you interview for that role. And let me tell you why. Because when you get beyond 6, all of a sudden your list of requirements gets really, really long, and maybe 3 people on the planet can fill that. 6 is where your decision-making process is optimum. And they've done, HBR, Harvard Business Review, had done a study on this and said, 6 is the number.
Really?
So really keep it to 6 or less when you're interviewing. So be very selective about who you want to interview. Make sure that they meet that 80% requirement. And then the third thing is make sure you do those references, and not just the person that person reported to. You want to talk about peers, and you want to talk to people who reported into that person. If you're not hiring an individual contributor, I do a lot of management hires, right? So people have to build teams underneath them. I want the person who doesn't just manage up well. I want the person who manages teams well, that everybody likes to be around, that works well with other people, because I'm building a cohesive team, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it'd have to fit into your culture and be able to get along with everybody. And that's a lot of consideration. I mean, they even, like you said, you had a virtual assistant, a VA, and I do too. And one of the things that was really important up front, and she's been with me for since the beginning of last year and a half. I had a requirements. The reason why was obviously I needed help in a lot of areas, and she was going to help me do a lot of things. But I defined some things so that we could measure against in those first few months. Like I need us to accomplish this, and it was very, and she did amazing, and she's still around. But Yeah, I think when you said that, I can really relate to that. I think that's really important to set those kind of key measurements up ahead of time, so you know you got the right person.
Well, and it's
Yeah,
good
so
for the person too. It's good for the person too, because then they know what's expected of them. So it makes it easy for them
Sure.
to perform for you, right? Very easy, and
Yeah.
it shows your strength as a leader, right? I give clear direction, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So let's land on this. So I had read your bio and stuff ahead of time, and obviously teams is a big part of that and what you help with and stuff. But you also talk a lot about diversity and building diverse teams and stuff like that. Do you have any thing you'd like to talk about there? Just because I've never had anybody talk on diversity on this podcast yet, and especially related to teams and business. And do you have any couple bullets for us to land on here?
Yeah, my first beef with this is that there's a lot of lip service to hiring diversity people. I think it's a great idea, but actually executing it's very complicated for most people. They don't understand, how what the requirements are for that, and I really think with diversity initiatives, I think it's important for everyone who sort of does business with other people, because especially if you're growing a business and you're collecting new customers, because the people on your team, your diversity of your team will allow you to have more diverse customers. It's a very important part of the diversity equation, but it's going to disrupt your culture a little bit when you do it. And you have to be ready for that, and you have to be ready to roll with those changes and adopt some new things as you learn. It's not going to be, hey, you got to fit into my culture, even though your culture is very different from mine, because I want to hire this diversity person.
Oh.
It's, I'm hiring this diversity person,
Right.
and we know our culture is going to change. And you don't really always know how it's going to change, but you know it's going to change, and you have to prepare your team to ride with the change. Yeah. I think that's the biggest part of diversity hiring. Yeah. That people they think it's just check a box. And it's really a lot more complicated, and that's why people are struggling with it, and that's why it continues to be an issue, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's something obviously I think about, and I haven't to date. My team's international, so India, Philippines, and but I am planning a U.S. team, and it's stuff that I think about a lot, and that's why I asked the question, because it's something that is going to be on my mind. Like, how does that work into what? And it's kind of interesting what you said, how it will change the culture, because you're going to have to kind of adapt to that, to wherever that takes you. So I don't have experience around that. Like I've never been. I think I've built diverse teams just naturally. I haven't really given it much thought. It just happens. But it's something I know I have to be conscious of, though, going forward.
Yeah, and I don't want you to overthink it either. I think people also overthink it. Like, they're like, oh, we got to do this, and we have to have all these little things work out. And people aren't exactly. Sometimes working with people isn't exactly what I would call everything in a neat, tidy box with a bow on it. Like, sometimes it's going to get messy. And it's really about how you work through these messes, right? And come out on the other side stronger as a team. And what you really want from the diversity candidates is not just, sort of this, I check the box on diversity. You want the diversity of thought, perspective, and they're going to see things very differently than you, because of their experiences in life have been very different than yours. And so you want to integrate that into sort of your teams, and it helps build more compassion among the team, a little more empathy, all these soft skills that everybody poo-pooed for a million years, like, let's just power through the business. Well, that doesn't work anymore, especially since COVID, right? COVID's really sort of we've had to all become softer, gentler with each other, and really more thoughtful. And that's it. It's not it's simple but not easy. Back to my simple but not easy sort of statement. Yeah.
Well, let's leave it at that. I appreciate you coming on today and sharing your story and your journey. I always have way too many notes at the end, but this isn't a 3-hour show, so we might have to have you back someday to talk about other things, especially around teams. I love talking about teams. I've built multiple teams over the decades in different industries and different things, and that always fascinates me. And it's something that's important to every business if you have teams, assuming they do. But it's always really, really fascinating, and there's so many common things that all businesses grapple with. But it was you have a great story, very inspiring. You had a lot of ups and downs. You had tried a lot of things. You had a few pivots in there. Until you found your thing and you slotted right in, and then you just focused on getting better at that thing. And that's a kind of a common story among successful people. That's kind of how it lands is. They go through this messy process to finding themselves, and then they discover themselves, and the rest is history. But great having you on.
Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you so much for your time today. It was really a pleasure, and I'm happy to come back and answer more questions or talk about team building or anything, really. Yeah.
You bet. All right. Well, you take care. Thanks again. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
That's all for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed that. Again, please subscribe if you haven't already and give us a thumbs up if we deserve it. If you want to comment on this episode's page, provide me with requests on topics for future episodes, or inquire about being a guest, please find your way to thebuilders.fm. You can contact me there or add a comment under these show notes. Now a word from our sponsor, my agency, Unified Web Design. We build custom websites, features, we maintain websites, we work with agencies to fulfill their web design and development needs, and more. If you're interested in our services or are looking for an agency to work with as a partner to build awesome sites for your clients, feel free to reach out to me at unifiedwebdesign.com. There's a handy contact me link at the top. Fill out that form and it will open a ticket, and that ticket will find its way to me. Thanks for joining me today. We'll see you next time.